So, this is gonna be my Poison Seismic Trap, Crucible, Feelgood, Poison Seismic Trap, League Starter. It's mostly a progression guide. Hope you got yourself some coffee. We're gonna immediately look at some gameplay with and without a diadem, since that might be a bit of an issue. Then I'm gonna explain to you a bit what this is about, how you can actually access the material behind it. We're gonna quickly figure out if this is for you or maybe not. And then we're gonna do a deep dive into a quite big PoB, a quite detailed PoB. And I'm gonna show you some more gameplay at the relevant steps. So you hopefully get like a visual feedback and representation to figure out if this is what you would like. Star Wars actually didn't want to cooperate, so I have to kind of re-record all the showcases here. It's a bit of a bad example because I got temporal chains. It's a T16 map here, by the way, Mesa. And this is how the endgame version scaled down to the new values. Well, look like roughly 20% below that value of the new value, I would say. So this is your general playstyle of this build. You mainly throw your exsanguinates around. That's your main objective here. And if you find something more beefy, you want to throw a seismic trap, like typically a blue pack. I throw like a single seismic into them. If you look back, they're actually dying behind us. And you can also make sure you have your malevolence up. If stuff gets even more beefy, you might want to focus from time to time. And run around and kill things. Let's do a boss real quick. This is with a diadem right now. We can get up here somehow and find a boss character. Here they are. I think Oak is pretty good because he heals and is quite mobile, so he doesn't always stand still. Want to wither him as well. And then he's basically, essentially he's already dead. Poison is already waking up. That's with a diadem. If we would go ahead on the same situation, let's say, okay, we do not have a diadem, which in this case, or my specific case here, will also deactivate our focus. So we do not longer have that, and it removes skitterbots since we don't have the reservation without a diadem for it anymore. And then we go into a different map here and have a look how that is on the actual helmet itself. It's a very bad helmet. There's like opportunity there, but just to see, hey, okay, diadem is gone. Are we screwed? Let's see if we find some monsters here. Maybe find an essence here as well. So yeah, that's essentially the same for mapping. So I can feel almost no difference between diadem and no diadem as long as we are in a mapping context. So you don't stand in crazy things. Some more here. And I'm gonna find the boss for you. I did manage to find the boss area. Obviously we want to turn on our malevolence. Probably dodge this guy, maybe wither him. And then he should already be a dead person. And there you go. This is without a diadem, with the diadem before. Roughly how the game is gonna feel like for you playing more of an endgame version of the build. Let's talk a bit about what this is about overall. Essentially, this is mostly a rather handheld progression guide for my specific version of Poison Seismic Trap. That's what I would recommend if a good friend would ask me about, hey, saw what you did last few leagues, kind of liked it, was appealing to me. How would I start with that? How would I go about that? And that's what I will give them. So that's essentially what you're getting out of this. It's made to have a good time, to have rather relaxing gameplay, to have rather smooth progression, to not deal with too complicated things, especially for newer players. It's not made to make you mirrors. It's not made to win you any races there. There's a lot of compromises made to make progression easier, to reduce trade, to reduce confusion and complexity in trade for significant amounts of damage and also significant amounts of additional survivability. A lot of trades made, but it's made to have a good time, and that's all the purpose for there, especially for a bit newer players. What you can do with this is you can absolutely complete the entire game outside of Ubers. It's definitely not made for Ubers and not super high simulacrums. It's 40-40 challenges viable, at least typically, depends a bit on the challenges, I guess. And it's absolutely there as a league starter, a relaxed league starter that allows you to farm up your higher projects, right? If you just want to get into the game, get into a league and have something you can farm, especially something like Expedition with, get your 30, 50, whatever divines without investing too much into the first character, especially if you stop at an earlier phase. You don't have to go all the way. The guide doesn't even go all the way. But even on the guide, if you cut like a phase, you get the chance to invest significantly less because you just want to move on from there. Let's talk about how you get the guide. There's going to be a flashbang warning. Flashbang in a few seconds. The document is white. I'm sorry. How do you get this information? Is in the description there's a Google document. Whenever you see something here in the video talked about, I cannot change videos, but I can change Google documents and I can change PoBs. So now flashbang warning. There you go. This is the Google document. This is where you find all the up-to-date information and it's constantly updated. So if you want to know if something changed or you want to start playing the build, please check back on the Google document first. In here you find a bit of introduction. Right now you find a bit of information for people that played before and that joined the Discord, like whatever stage I am. In terms, there's a bit of introduction. There's typically a collection of relevant videos I find to the current state during the league. So it's typically things added during the league. You can check here if there's new things. There's a league start atlas thing in there. There's my leveling filters. You find the actual PoB. You find a link to a Discord with a small but very, very nice community of people that really like to push the build a bit further than I want them to, but that's fair enough. And here you find the PoB with a changelog, and in the actual PoB, that was not a PoB, here we go. In the notes section, you find a number here as well. So you can compare this here to the changelog down here and see if there was any update. So you don't need to click on the video all the time. You don't need to subscribe to anything if you don't want to. Just check on the Google document and you should see if there's any changes. If you would like to be notified about changes, you can join the Discord, and I use the add everyone. You don't mute the add everyone thing, and I will ping you if there's an update here. I will not ping you for any video updates because that's really dumb. So just in case I actually think PoB update is relevant, I'm gonna ping you off about that, or anything I find relevant enough you should know in case you play the build with me there. So you can join Discord for information there. Mini flashbang warning. I have too many flashbangs, don't I? Let's talk a bit about cons, right? Issues about the build. I think that's really important. It's almost more important than to talk about strength there. You might die to damage over time. The build itself has a big amount of regen, and it's quite tanky overall. That's fine. It's quite comfy to play, but this regen is only active while you're fighting. So, meaning, if you throw your traps or your traps explode, or basically essentially whenever your traps trigger and explode, you get a huge amount of regen, and whenever you kill stuff, you get regen out of that. But outside of that, and that can be very present in boss fights, right? While you're trying to dodge mechanics, maybe there's some damage over time. Looking at you, Maven, that one is a bit difficult. You might have issue with damage over time and it takes you down, but you don't really have regen. For the more difficult bosses, there are ways around it, but just so you know, it's definitely a weakness of this build. Overall physical damage, also especially in my version, we're a bit low on the armor side, especially if our flasks are not up. So physical damage, and especially in combination, that's a bit the kryptonite. Of it, typically not a big deal. I, in the past leagues, didn't have much issue leveling way past level 90. If that's a bit too difficult there for you, you can always use some paid service, right? Like in-game paid service to get you leveled a bit, like 5-phase rotation or something like that. But yeah, keep that in mind. In the Crucible League, we have a bit of a weird early progression. There were a lot of changes, and I'm not entirely happy with them anymore, I have to say. So the early progression isn't as nice and cool as it was before. It's okay. It's totally fine. It's going to be an hour or two of your life that's not perfectly smooth, but just so you know, there's some tiny hiccups. Kind of leads into this. There are some things that changed with Crucible, right? The build lost like 40% of damage. The new ascendancy and how everything actually feels is not really tested. I did my very best to simulate changes, to deal with the new PoB, but there's always some kind of risk. The same with the leveling section. It's still poisonous concoction. Stick with me. It's poisonous concoction. It's going to be fine. But it got never actually live tested. So there's some, just a tiny bit of risk there, right? Already said, we lost 40% of damage. In terms of resists and attributes, I designed it already last time in a way that especially attributes are fixed to specific items, which makes progression a bit easier. We're going to talk about that later. But is resists and attributes, because we use a bunch of uniques, especially if we can use a diadem, they do get a bit tight and a bit specific towards the end, especially if you want to optimize on items and you need specific mods on them, right? So it's a bit annoying to some people. It's not as free where you can put things. Already said, Maven is difficult. Maven just in general for this build is difficult. She basically has the, how's it called? Damage over time things while she's not there or while we need to dodge things. So that's a bit annoying. And she can deactivate your entire region situation. And she's tiny. Just boss hitbox for seismic in general is very important because it reduces overlaps. The brain in the middle is great. It's big and you deal so much damage, but to her it's a bit annoying. However, we're gonna reduce the cooldown of her skills now in Crucible by 10%, so maybe that's a bit better. Who knows? And with Crucible right now, the best way I've found that seems reliable to me to play this build is to swap significantly later to seismic at all. We're gonna stay poisonous concoction into white maps, right? And we're gonna gather 5 to 10 to 15 depending what you start with. So early to mid 70s, we're gonna stay in these white maps and immediately transition into an Eldritch battery setup with a few key uniques in there and a few key items in there. They're super cheap. So if you check if this, we need an obliteration wand. I just pulled up the prices on this Pioneer Ninja thing from Sanctum. So even worst case here, you have like, I don't know, 10, 13 chaos and then it drops to 4. This will be cheaper, I believe, because I don't see why there would be so much need this league around. Leper's Alm apparently was 9 C on day 1, immediately drops to 2 C. I feel like I'm the only person in the world that uses that shield. Maybe you are as well. Can't expect this to be very expensive. Minx Heart typically starts out a bit higher. It's not an actual key thing, but it would be nice to have. So worst case, according to all prices, you would need to collect 50 C, which seems a bit high. Worst case, you cut out the Minx Heart. You also want a helmet with 150 not chaos, 150 energy shield to get started on this. Even better, you already have some kind of a random 5 link. But yeah, helmet, Leper's Arm, obliteration, and a few levels, at least like beginning of 70. And that gets you into actual trap top. And that is flashbang again, just late. And some people don't like that. On a real quick overview first on the PoB, for everybody, is you have a typical setup here. You have your different skill trees here. Always make sure you use the same thing everywhere, right? At tree, there's at the trees, there's like something like in this case, let's say this is for phase 3 and phase 4. The skills also 3 and 4, so you choose one of those, so they're just matching. And on the items, oh, there's like 4 and 5 together, but still, let's say we are looking at a phase 4 build, we have 4 here, and 4 here. Just make sure you choose the same things. Overall, you have your leveling trees here, you have early mapping, you have preparing to trap swap, trap swapping actually, different phases through the progression, same thing for the skills, and same thing for the items. You do have a huge section with notes, so with some frequently asked questions, and you have for everything, even act by act here, something about leveling, you have the acts, and then for every single phase you have notes on what to do and what I expect you to do. And I did my best to describe as handheldy as possible what you're supposed to do. The notes are overall significantly smaller than they were last league, just less options, and also significantly less phases because we do swap less around. One big thing is typically DPS. You see, this is like not the full version, but it's a phase 4. It's just before you get awakened gems and other nonsense that I want you to get. And you say, okay, this only has 3.5 million DPS. That's a bit crazy. Magic lies in the configuration file. Typically, what you do is you wither the boss 15 times. You might also actually use a bossing setup there, so we could showcase that. So you activate your cold iron point, you go back here, you think, oh yeah, maybe we also focused and we're already at like 10 million DPS. And then if you want to be fancy, you say, okay, maybe the boss is really big, right? You make a number bigger there, that's cool. Or maybe you do a bit of cheating and say it's like a standard boss, then you're also like at 13 million things. And then if you're really sneaky, you just increase this count here, right? And say, yeah, we're gonna do like all waves are gonna hitting, and we're gonna do full DPS, and then you're at 35 million or something like that. So it's super conditional. That's kind of the point. To me, to be honest, I believe that you can do average wave, average active traps, average waves. This is really difficult. And if you're actually fighting a boss, and by the way, you keep it at a medium boss. By the way, Maven is small, just to be sure. I think Maven is small, right? Oh no, Maven is actually medium. Okay, so that's not too bad. But I like to compare on what I had before, Guardian Pinnacle bosses. It is totally fair for bossing, if you're using the bossing setup, to set this to 15 stacks of Withered. That's fine. If you're using only Withering Stab, I recommend you go with like 6 Wither stacks, and focused, obviously it's conditional, but you can press your focus button. So if you actually have a diadem, have the actual mod, then this is realistic, somewhat realistic DPS in there. If you want to see your absolute burst at bosses, it can be okay to go 15 here, because you can pretty much guarantee that with a blade trap. And you can actually go on this one here. You say this is like not like a single trap, right? And you do the average wave heading by size. That's not too bad. And in this case, in this configuration, you could go ahead and say, okay, all 4 of these traps are actually heading at the same time, like this initial burst, and the enemy is gonna stand still in all these trap durations here. Then you can look at the full DPS. So this is not an unrealistic number, I would say, in this specific case. If you want to look at your burst DPS, that seems kind of fine to me. Overall, I like this a little bit more, and I think it's quite realistic. As said, these are conditional things. Turn them on as you wish, and then that's fine. But it's the overall overview there. That's what you expect. You can get that in the description. And now we're actually gonna go through it step by step. Let's get started on leveling. We're gonna use Poisonous Concoction. Okay? I know, it got nerfed heavily. It got heavily nerfed. However, I'm convinced, and through testing, I have a full 1 to 10 run, even though I cannot test the changes to the charges, obviously. They're gonna be fine. We made some adjustments and you're gonna be okay. I'm super convinced on that, and I have some solutions in case it actually turns out a bit worse than we would overall expect. So In terms of leveling, you're gonna have your trees here. You have a very typical tree situation. If we look a bit down here, we take some life here, damage there, more life. These nodes are really good. They solve like essentially all your mana, and they make you quite immortal because you leech so much life and so much mana, making your mana flask pretty much obsolete at this point, which gives us an opportunity to run more life flasks, which is really good for charges. So I expect you to run the minimum 2, very likely 3 life flasks. If things go bad, maybe just run 4 life flasks and the speedy one, the quicksilver one, and you're definitely gonna be fine. We have only volley. We come to the skill sections. Let's get to the skill sections in a second. This solves essentially mana and life, and we get some poison stuff here. This node later on is really bad, I feel like, but early on I feel like this is an amazing node because it deals so much more damage and you're hitting things only once anyway, most cases. So really high value node, I feel like, some poison chance situations. After that, we really want these flask charges, right? We want flask charges here, and we want this mastery as well, which we didn't really take before, but now I think it's really, really mandatory. So in additional flasks, we're not gonna path down here typically. I know a lot of builds, it's an alternative to go down here and get toxic strikes anyway. I'm not gonna do that. But if for some reason it really doesn't work out with the charges, you path through here, which is quite high value nodes. This one, maybe not really, but it's kind of okay. And you get field medicine. Latest here with like 4 life flasks, and this thing, there's no way you're gonna run out of charges and have a huge issue. And even if you run out of charges at the end of bosses, you deal so much damage that they are definitely dead by that time. There's like almost no way, I can't imagine it. So that's like your everything goes bad, pick up field medicine, and you're 100% gonna be okay. Right? So yeah, typical tree, more life, we take some reservation nodes here. If you fill out some more, we get these accuracy nodes here, which are really important because it allows you to drop our precision and get ready to use grace, essentially. So you want these accuracy nodes. I know there's some controversial things about Poison's Concoction needing accuracy or not. It needs accuracy, as far as I know, unless somebody has some other proof that it doesn't need accuracy. I think the consensus is it needs accuracy, trust me. After that, I'm gonna path off here, more life, it's a bit of intelligence which we need anyway, more reservation things, and we're gonna get a pretty relatively early double curse. This is probably, I think it says here Act 8, so 7, 8 act, we're already pretty far. We get a second curse, which is really, really cool, very, very powerful, to be fair. And then after that, we would be already done with leveling. In terms of labs here, this is your first lab, and I would do this around early Act 4, as typically a pretty good time. Really take this node first. I know it's a defensive node, but it's a very, very powerful defensive node. The second and the third lab, because we are going to transition later, as I said earlier, you don't have to take them actually. You can go even into maps without taking them. You could consider, depending on how you feel at the end of Act 10, just before you kill Katava, say, okay, you're just gonna knock out the next 2 labs. But the only thing it does, it gives you immunity to ignite and shock. For the early mapping, still with Poison's Concoction, and everything else here is really not gonna do anything for you. So do as you wish, either end of Act 10, or just before you do the trap swap, but make sure you do the labs. Don't forget about the labs before you actually trap swap, because you need the regen for it to be fine. Otherwise, it's like a bit of a nightmare. So yeah, make that true in terms of labs. That's like your tree progression. If you look a bit at the skills, what are we gonna use there? I don't think it's worth to mule anything at this point. You could still try out muling your splitting steel, and if you really don't like Cobra Lash, but most people hate muling more than using Cobra Lash. So first 12 levels, I think it's fine to use just Cobra Lash with some chance to poison, and we get faster attacks really early now. That's kind of cool. Add Brutus if you're going with Cobra Lash. Swap in Viper Strike, right? Don't throw away your Viper Strike super early. Just level it in an offhand or something. swap it in just for the Brutus fight. Really good there. Makes it way, way, way better, because that's terrible with Cobra Lash. Like, poking at him. Don't do that. Make sure you get your precision. You can actually just level precision. There, you won't run into huge mana issues if you leveled it up. You can be very precise and check your offensive thing if you're already at 100% or not. Like accuracy, hit chance. Do as you wish. Maybe stop at some point leveling it. But typically, until we drop it, you can pretty much straight level it and don't need to worry about it. That should work out perfectly fine. We get Flame Dash at some point, replacing Frostblink. Some people like Frostblink more. Do as you please. In terms of after the Pirate, we're gonna swap to Poisonous Concoction. That's the idea. We are only gonna use Volley, no lesser multiple projectiles. Because, in case I didn't say it earlier, the changes. Currently, it consumes 2 charges, like from a life flask, if that's possible. And now it's gonna consume 1 charge per projectile, right? So with this, we are at 3 projectiles. So until Act 4, end of Act 4, we're gonna use 1 more charge per attack than we did before, assuming we're just using Volley. So it's 3 instead of 2, and that's perfectly fine. You could use faster attacks here as well, right? If you have it anyway, I recommend you get Void Manipulation and faster attacks and just swap them, see what feels better. I think Void Manipulation gonna feel better, especially with charges, so you get more damage out of your charges, but obviously faster attacks feels a bit better, right? Too, like it's a bit more mobile. I think use both and swap them around a bit and see what's better. I still like Flame Dash. Withering Step, super helpful. Don't put this on your left click, please. This early on, just don't, because you're gonna use up your Flame Dash charges and then you can't move, and that's really bad. Just make it an extra button. Use it for big mobs, for bosses and things like that. That wither effect is really good. In Act 2, we're gonna pick up Herald of Agony and Skitterbots, and that's it. That's the only addition. Not much to do. Same setup here. We are on a triple green setup there. On Act 3, typically the things in here are only the ones that change. Like Precision didn't show up, right? Because it didn't change. Just keep it until there. Act 3, we could at some point get a 4-link, right? So we could add our faster attacks there, which I believe is really cool. You could do any other support. I like the attack speed on it. That's really nice, I think. We're gonna have our Temporal Chains. It's a really cool curse. You could go Despair, but I think Temporal Chains, especially with the slowing and everything, right? It's really cool, very comfy and also safe. We're gonna add Plague Bearer, which seems kind of mandatory by now, I think. I would not run without it before that. It's a bit of an annoying skill, but yeah, a bit too powerful. Should probably pick it up. And still have these guys here. They actually didn't change, so I'm inconsistent or no. And you're gonna get Grace, but you're not gonna use it, right? It says keep it in offhand. Just level it already. We're gonna use it later. You could, however, say, okay, you're not running Skitterbots and put Grace maybe first if you feel better with that. Do as you please. In Act 4, by the end of Act 4, as a quest reward, you do get Greater Volley. So you replace Volley with Greater Volley, and now we are at 5 projectiles. And that's where the flask charge thing should kick in, and where you need to have a look, like how does it actually feel? How many life flasks do you need? That's something you need to figure out. Before that, obviously, we did also greater multiple projectiles on top of that. That was insane, but that's 9 charges, so yeah, it's probably not gonna happen. You can give it a shot if you want to. You need an Alchemy Orb to buy the second one, right? Either Greater Volley is free, but the second one, after you complete Act 4, you can buy for an Alchemy Orb if you want to try that. In Act 6, same Poisonous Concoction. There is Plague Bearer. You could add increased area of effect. It's not super important there, but if you have the links, why not? It's a nice addition. You get Shield Charge with faster attacks. That's like really cool, I think. It's like very mandatory. It makes you so much faster, so much more zoom. If you want a second faster attacks, I would go back to Act 1 now and buy one, because it's leveled a bit. Don't buy it in Act 6. You get some free levels out of that. Here we go for Grace. That should be around the time where you either with this, or then if you have this, you should have this one as well, I think, at that time, right? Is that roughly that? Yeah, that's roughly that. you need the accuracy things already, and you need to have dropped precision there, right? So you have the accuracy node, so you can drop precision. You have the reservation, you need to figure out, then you can activate grace instead. So you're gonna run grace, Herald of Agony, and summon skitterbots. Feels pretty good, I feel like. You've got so much evasion, so you're not gonna get hit that much. Feels really good. Technically, you could also opt for something like determination if you feel better about that at this stage already. And that essentially concludes your leveling. You're gonna rush to Act 10. There's an entire Act 1 to 10 leveling guide I made. It's very educational. It shows my first attempt at this, where I do things a little bit different. So as always, do whatever is in the PoB, not what is in a particular video, because I cannot change videos as we learn more. Just do that. Also, same thing here. It's kind of written down step by step per act. There's some extra tips. Same thing here. There's the do not kill Kitava thing. And that's a bit specific, but I really like early heisting. And a lot of people hate that, but I think it's really, really good, to be fair. Because as soon as you hit level 55, you can go to the Rogue Harbor with every level up, even though the vendor refresh is nerfed, I know, and buy up contracts for chance orbs, white contracts. If they're not white, like white quality, rarity, you need to scour them. You don't want to run rare or magic contracts, just white plain contracts, and buy them up. You can Google which ones are the best, but it's stuff like lockpicking and demolition and brute force, I think, are the ones I typically buy. And buy them up, go back to leveling, you level up, cool, go to the harbor, buy some more, see if he has some more, buy them all up. As soon as you basically completed everything, all the skill points, everything done, maybe even the labs if you really want to do them already. And then you're gonna go to the Rogue Harbor and run all the contracts you already acquired, and you can consider even buying more every time you level up, right? Buy more contracts, and that's purely for early currency. That is worth so much, in my opinion. It's not only about the divines and the, if you get one, or rare items or the chaos things. It's about the bubblegum currency you get. You're just gonna have more fusings, and you're gonna have alterations, and you're gonna have chromes. So it's just easier to deal with everything, and time well spent, in my opinion. You're also gonna level up a bit, because heist gives Spider-Man a big amount of XP. Infinite heist is obviously gone, but you still can do this. Level up a bit in there, get some starting currency, and maybe get already enough currency for the trap swap later we're gonna talk about. Might already be enough, and if you're super lucky, you're gonna find a cold iron point and gonna be a very happy panda in this case. So I recommend you do that. You do you, whatever feels correct to you. Also please make sure, I think I have it in here or somewhere, 9, here, Blood Aqueduct. Makes it really cool if you stay in Blood Aqueduct from whatever level you arrive, and you stay until like level 62. Just run it a few times, make sure your gear gets a bit better, fix some links, upgrade your gear, like get rid of these pieces that you have since Act 1 or Act 2 that have so low bases, right? The base armor and evasion on these pieces are going to be so low, it's really going to hold you back. It's a good time, get your flasks up to snack, you know. Also a good time to already start leveling gems, right? The ones you will need later, acquire them. You have some currency by that. You can go to Act 6, buy the things, buy it in the respective acts, put them into your offhand. Things like that, just level. That's essentially leveling, and once that's done, we're gonna come to the part of early maps, which is a bit weird, because we're gonna stay Poisonous Concoction. I'm just gonna swap all of this on early maps here. So this is actually a 64 tree in this case, right? So you should be 62 to 64. If you're only 62, then it's just these two missing essentially, I guess. And also maybe in items, early maps. So this is roughly how your white map experience is gonna look like. Obviously not great, very doable, and a terrible map, to be fair. out of campaign, I actually mean, not out of maps. So yeah, white map experience. You kind of hit things. There's like a more tanky mob, which you probably have to use our buffs a bit for it. Isn't too great, right? You're gonna stand a bit with them, but you can kill them. You should be kind of fine. Might need to keep your flask charges up or your flasks up so you don't die. You might need to use your buffs a bit more consistently than later on. Even for normal traffic, you should use your plague bearer. There's like, is this a boss? It's probably a boss. So yeah, white map experience roughly looks like this. In terms of tree, not much difference. Pretty much what you end up with. You take a bunch of damage out of this thing. This is how you're gonna start the early mapping. And in terms of skills, it's pretty much what you end with as well. I don't want you to change too much and to invest too much deeper, right? There's also double curse in here. You could put a Arcanist brand there if you feel like, but I feel like early on self-casting them, it's not that bad actually. And I like running Herald of Agony, Summon Skitterbots and Determination here in combination with a Jade and a Granite Flask. If you can sustain like on 2 flasks, we gotta see how that actually turns out. Maybe you need a third one. You need to figure out what you drop here. Maybe you want Grace instead of the Determination. You can fiddle around with this. Idea is, what you need to do during this phase is you want to get to this preparation of trap swap things. So you want some levels, right? Some XP, not that much actually, right? So you start at 64, you probably want to be 70 at least, maybe 75, something like this. And you want to acquire specific items and you want to, yeah, specific items essentially. Let's talk about the tree first, where you want to go. If you look here, the tree gets like bigger, right? And way bigger, it's like 83. As in the notes, you don't need 83, right? You just want to pick up this pretty early, I think. We're gonna use the spell suppression lucky tag in this case, because it has really high value. Because you get some spell suppression here, and you get also some here over time if you already level up this far and you prepare obviously to take Eldritch Battery. In that case, the spell suppression lucky thing should turn out really, really well. Also, here, oh no, in this case you still stay on this one, that's fine. So yeah, you want to get this stuff, and because of this high level, all this part down here, right, isn't necessary. This is like how far as you get, if you actually get that far. And if you still feel comfy in your white maps, that's cool, you know, go down there, get a bit further. But what you really need is pretty much everything except behind this node here. You might need these 2 nodes actually for dexterity purposes. So yeah, don't check any other dexterity. Just take these 2 here, maybe the socket here, and then fill out everything else. And for the actual trap swap, you need to have like 12 regrets, but you have them from the campaign. So from this, you can just immediately swap over and take the right things. Skills are reset, pretty basic setup, nothing happening there. In terms of items that you have here, it's just life and resist. I just put random life resist things, right? You don't need all these specific resists because it's completely overcap, but this is just trying to show get anything with life and resist. What you can already try to do is allocate toxic strikes, maybe as soon as possible. If you have a somewhat decent amulet, because it's really cheap, it's just a crimson oil. That's very easy to do. And what I like to do in terms of attributes as early as I can. I think I put it into the notes somewhere here. We need 179 int total, right? So we need 46 int on top that what we have from the tree somewhere. And this is because of the wand. And we need 155 strength in total, but that only is if you level shield charge and determination too high. Like right now, I'm at 135, or I should be, because I didn't change the skills, I guess. Determination, this is still at 20. So if I reduce this one to like 15, we are fine again, right? So just don't level this too high, and you don't need any extra crazy amount of strength. Then it's perfectly fine to have like something like this. So I recommend in terms of attributes, get a strength, intelligence, armor, amulet with more intelligence. 46 is the number. Minimum, get any amulet with that. That's the most important thing. So you do not need to worry about intelligence on any other gear. You can swap any gear at any time without worrying about your attributes ever again, because you know it's on the amulet and nothing happens there. You also want 20 strength on there, if you can get. And in addition, you want on your belt 61 strength. So again, if you have these both of these pieces and they fulfill attributes, you cannot fail randomly in your attributes, because sometimes it happens, you have enough int, you know you have 179 int, but then it turns out, oh yes, some of that int was on your ring. Later on you would want to change your ring, and then you need to swap all the gear pieces. You don't want that. I really liked fixing attributes to items. So that's what we do here. And I've done there, do this as early as possible. Same thing here on the helmet. That's actually then, yeah, that's the preparation thing. Essentially, I'm gonna go to the trap swap. You want a helmet. Actually, let's go for the trap swap, I think. That's basically it. So you just run wipe maps doing this stuff here, right? Where do we go next? To the prepare trap swap thing, right? As I said, it's 83, can be less, but there are things you need to accomplish in your white maps in order to be able to swap traps. 3, done. Trap swap, obviously you want these skills, ideally you want them way earlier, since blood aqueduct as many as you can get, right? So just make sure you're already leveling your skills as early as possible, latest when you enter maps, right? Just make sure you add them somewhere, as many of them as you can, especially obviously your main skills and the main supports for them. And in terms of items, what you want to achieve during leveling, let's get to that, is, as said, fix your amulet and fix your belt to have the right stats and get the Toxic Strike anointment. It's not mandatory, that anointment, but it's really easy to get. It's a single crimson oil. You can manage that. Do that. In terms of helmet, you want a helmet with roughly 150 energy shield. This is 146. Fine, let's say at least 145 energy shield. That's all the helmet needs to do. But you need one with this amount, at least. Everything else is bonus and perfectly fine. You can take it. You want an obliteration wand. Should be super, super cheap. And you want a leper's arm. Should also be very, very cheap. The wand, because it's incredible for mapping. It's like your endgame mapping item. And this is also your endgame mapping item that provides you with all the additional energy shield that you need to use Eldritch Battery. So these two in combination are enough energy shield, so you don't have to worry about energy shield anywhere else. Again, fixing something to an item, so you don't have to worry that much. Helmet I already said. In terms of chest piece, if you can already get a 5-link, that's really cool. Maybe that's possible. Sometimes they're super cheap, super easy to find. If it's still a 4-link, it's fine. It's kind of a bonus. You can read all of this again in Trap Swap in terms of what do you need to get done. Let's see if you forgot something, links, and that's it. Oh yeah, on actual Trap Swap later. Yeah, let's talk about it in a second. Let's go to Trap Swap. So you can then Trap Swap. That's it. That's what you do as early as possible. So let's go to be an actual trapper, and that's also still the same because that's what we got. Also get your correct flasks maybe, and on actual trap swap phase 1, that's it. Here it's important, that's what I tried to say earlier, right? This mastery changes from the 300%, and that's really difficult to see. I don't know, I put it into the notes, but this changes to the new mastery, which I actually think might be really cool. I want to try this. If you can't get crit anymore, it eliminates an entire map mod, right? So that sounds really, really cool. And nothing else changes there. You still, depending on how far you got down here, you obviously need these nodes. You can still fill this out, and you're only in your 80s there. Skills, we already said. Basic setup. If you have a 5-link, really cool. You can also put efficacy there. I think that might also be really good. Maybe deadly elements is better. Something like that. 4-link is okay. 5-link is better. Obviously, typical exsanguinate with your trap support. We're not gonna do any shenanigans with the Deerstalkers anymore. No life tapping. I like Carrot of Agony, Grace, and Determination in this case, right? Dropping skitter bots. We need to stay alive. We want to push higher content. We need to stay alive so we can get XP. And with the swap, your damage is going to be high enough, easily. Shield charging with our fast attacks, obviously. This doesn't have to be here anymore with Withering Stab, so just found an error, perfect. I like Arcanist Brand around this time. You can try if you like it or not. If you want to use self-casting, you still have the buttons for that. Valborn Shell, or just Molten Shell is the important part. Val is like on top of that. Some flame dashing to get over stuff. Super basic setup, nothing really happening there. In terms of trap swap, already said. Our basic items we need, Mink's Heart, not entirely important. Everything else here outside for the things with the stats is just life and resist things, right? We just want to get all of that sorted. At any point, you can get any jewel that says corrupted blood cannot be inflicted on you. It's all the corrupted jewels, corrupted and placid. Get one of those. I think they're incredibly powerful because it's so annoying to deal with corrupted blood. So I will take any jewel, right? This one is a very good one. The reduced effect of chill is really nice. Chaos damage, that's a really good one. But any will do, as long as it's not a unique that somehow bricks your build. If it doesn't hurt you massively, get any of them, put them on, and forget about corrupted blood forever. For the entire league, that's really cool. That's already the trap swap. This is roughly the experience you can expect right after swapping into traps. We have our basic items acquired, this one as well. We are on a 4 link because there's a Withering Stab. Most of the gems are down leveled here a bit. So roughly how it's gonna look and feel into going into yellow maps just after you swapped. You're not that tanky yet, especially regarding spell suppression. Even with the lucky node, you gonna run around, kill things, which is totally fine. Feels pretty good, I would say. You just need to be a bit careful with not charging into the packs too much, right? So since you're not that tanky, you might want to use your buffs a bit, right? Keep malevolence up. Just make a bit of an effort towards this. And then, yeah, roughly your yellow map experience. This is where I would say the game really starts. You go directly from white maps to yellow maps with all of this. Like there's a bit of a beefy mob, so I want to actually throw a seismic and activate malevolence, and they actually die. If you would go ahead and take the same thing straight, no more level ups, no more gem ups, you would straight go into like a tier 14 there. It would be just right after you swap. It would be a bit rough, probably not ideal, but yeah, in case you just want to rush through this essentially. We see a bit of a tier 14 map here. It's pretty tight in here. It's a bit difficult. You need to be a bit careful. We don't rush into monsters too badly, but this would be on a tier 14. It's not like this is unplayable, but it's not the greatest. So you probably want to wait until your gems level up a bit. Maybe you get a bit better gear, and especially just levels. As you saw there, it's still a bit dangerous in the tier 14. For certain things you want to be a bit more careful. There's another blue pack. Let's see if we can blow that one up. Or if we die through these sparks here, right? So yeah, directly into a tier 14. A bit rough, but other than that, should be fine. Next step here is phase 2. So if you look even at the tree here, for phase 2, for trap swap, I completely forgot. I need to talk about this. We are allocating Eldritch Battery, right? In case you don't know what this is. What Eldritch Battery does, that's also why we need the energy shield, right? Eldritch Battery makes so your energy shield moves over to mana, and you can use it as if it were mana. You use it to cast spells. So you reserve all your mana and you can still cast stuff because you used that energy shield. That's why we need so much energy shield. And you say, why do we need like 500 mana? Why do you need 500-600 energy shield? It's because of our, where did it go? Oh, it's in here. That's where we add this. It's malevolence. Divine Blessing Malevolence is essentially the super mana hungry thing. You basically combine this with a Divine Blessing, this Malevolence thing, and it makes it so you can cast this aura for a lot of mana, basically 50% of your mana cost, I would say, which is quite a lot. And then it's on for a certain amount of time. You just have to press it every whatever second. I don't know if it says anything here. That's influenced anyway. Maybe it's 9 seconds here. It's probably more because you have some duration or whatever. That's why you need so much. So you need to be able to cast that, spend that, like, what, 300 something mana, and still have enough to throw some traps until your energy shield recharges. So that's the basic idea of Eldritch Battery, right? Infinite mana while reserving all your mana. That's the whole idea. Okay, so almost forget about that. So now we can get to phase 2. And yeah, still same skills here, items, phase 2. So as said, 3 is almost no difference, right? So yeah, we're gonna move this here. Basically, we don't need the lucky thing anymore in phase 2. I'm gonna show you why. And down here, again, right, it's a high level 3. You might be, I cannot be level 94 or something. That's fine, right? If you look at this, if you remove this, that's like 7 points, and already a 94 becomes a late 80, right? So you're just working towards things there. And if you're higher level, you know where to go. That's why these trees are so high. This nothing here changes anymore. It's just going to be more defense and less dying. It's essentially the idea behind this. Gems and stuff doesn't really change much, or you can specifically check, but it's gear. And the main difference here is spell suppression, right? So we have probably like better bases by now. And we do get spell suppression. We get it on our chest, on our gloves, and on our boots. And we need a total of 35%, I believe. I wrote it in here, I guess. We need 35%. We don't want it on our helmet or anything. Our helmet is probably an ES base anyway, so you cannot even roll it. But do not put spell suppression on your helmet. Fix it on these other items. Because if you put it on your helmet and then you get a really good chest and you think it's enough and you set 100%, later on you want to swap your helmet, maybe even to a diadem, and then you can't without changing all other items. Don't do that to yourself, right? That's like gimping yourself. So put it to the correct items. And that's quite a bit of a challenge, to be fair, because getting these items can be a bit hard because spell suppression is just a bit expensive early on. But you got time there, right? Before you have it, before you are at 100% without this, you still take the lucky node, right? Just stick to the lucky node. You can even, if you already have 1 or 2 pieces and you're like a few % off, each of these nodes gives 4% spell suppression, 4 each. So there's 8, there's 16 here. So if you didn't manage it entirely on gear, don't be afraid to just click 1 or 2 of these nodes for some time being. That's perfectly fine. That's okay. So there's a bit of a solution there. Other than that, in terms of items, there isn't too much. We at some point go towards an unset ring. You have enough sockets at this stage because you cannot use skitter bots. So in that helm spot, you could use your withering step, but it's interesting to know already later on, if you ever get enough reservation or a diadem which has enough reservations, you will need an unset ring for withering step, or you keep self-casting your curses, but it sounds terrible. So maybe already look for unset rings and see if you can maybe fix this in place. So always know, okay, this needs to be an unset ring to some certain extent. So that's kind of objective here. That's like phase 2, right? Get better stuff and make sure you get your spell suppression done. Phase 3. Again, phase 3-4 is in terms of 3 the same. It's just more again, but you see up here Eldritch Battery disappearing and these reservation nodes appearing here. This is a move if you get a diadem or enough or other ways. Yeah, essentially just if you get a diadem, because you need still these nodes down here to get in skitter bots on top of everything else. But if you get a diadem, you don't need Eldritch Battery anymore. So these 3 points just move conveniently down here. And other than that, I think it adds a tiny bit of levels in case you're already really, really high. If not, it's fine. Just take a bit of a lower tree. You're going to have less life. Same thing. In terms of skills here, nothing really changes except for summon skitterpods. Assuming you got a diadem. You can only do this with a diadem and this swap here. In terms of items on phase 3, if you look here, it's essentially the same items, just the helmet changes. Well, it is the same item. And that's the diadem. And diadem is, even without the specific mod, there's a mod on it that says, in this case, 88% increased duration of ailments you inflict while focused. Very powerful node. Very powerful mod. Any diadem, no matter if it has this mod or not, is a huge upgrade, but you kind of have to decide if you want to buy it twice or not, right? So ideally, get the correct one right away. Depends on how expensive it will be. It might be incredibly expensive next league. I personally would say I would never buy a diadem over 8 divines at any point ever. I don't think it's worth it unless I'm swimming in currency, but I would never do that. I would ideally pay early for divine and be fine. That's what I would be waiting for. Depends a bit on the changes. One thing about this specific mod here, in PoB, I believe, in general, I think it's still the case. If I look at a basic one here and make a new one and say which one it is, can I say which one it is? It's this one here. There is a bit of an issue. Focus element duration. And I would actually fix it down to 90. Okay, earlier it was like it went way too high, so they fixed it. Because there's PoBs out there, they have like old diadems. And last league it was still the case where this element duration was way, way, way higher, even though it got nerfed. So 90% is max. Just make sure that's like in PoBs. That's the correct one if you PoB yourself. So yeah, that being said, that distracted me a little bit. That's ideal if you can get it. And that essentially is the change here. That really is the change. It gets you skitterbots, and that's really powerful and really good. What if you can't? If it's just not in reach, maybe it's a chase item now, or anything like that. That's okay. We're just gonna stick with a rare helmet. We make sure the helmet, whatever helmet it is, right? It needs to have still 150, maybe even 200 ideally energy shield. And right away, it doesn't need to have anything else, because diadem also doesn't have anything else really, right? You need to still have Eldritch Battery on your tree allocated, that stays there. So if you, yeah, that's basically what you do. You have opportunities with this helmet. This focus mod is available on normal helmets as well through Betrayal. That's possible. Someone in YouTube actually commented, because I didn't even know, I didn't realize, you can make reservation efficiency helmets, right? You can make a helmet that allows you, in combination with, sadly on tree, you have to take the mastery then here probably, and still the Eldritch Batteries. It costs you 3 points to get skitter points. Not sure if that's worth it. Probably yes. So that's a possibility. You can get, next to the energy shield, any other kind of mod that you want and that helps you. More life, more other defenses, some offensive things maybe. So there's opportunity in using a rare, essentially. That doesn't right away somehow brick the build. There's just some differences. So if it's too expensive, then scrap it. I'm going to update probably if we see if it's like 40, 50 divines, then we're just going to see what exact item we want to use in craft. But for now, don't worry if either one thing or the other thing is true. Just have a look. If you can't use skitterbots, honestly, you don't need an unset ring. Even that is already a huge buff in my box. That's this phase, essentially. That's all about this phase. There's way more notes about this. Flasks here, good that I wrote it down. Flasks are incredibly important. Just make sure you have actually good flasks, right? I like panic flasks, right? Instant recovery on low life. Other people like normal instant flask, something like this. And I like bleed immunity on my life flask. kind of important. Even though we are corrupted Bloody Moon, still I like anti-bleeds, things are good. I like quartz flasks really well because of the phasing, it's really cool. Granite, obviously. The silver one is very debatable, I would say, if you even need it, and later on we're going to even replace this, and a quicksilver. What I like on all my flasks, except for life, because you can't actually do that there, is used when charges reach full. I just want to automate these. Super, super cool. I still really like gain free charges when you're hit by an enemy, because I believe it still works if you dodge the attack, like evasion the attack, or block it, or I think it somehow still works. I'm not entirely sure. I'm doing this forever. Convince me otherwise, change my mind in the comments, but I think it's still a good idea. Even with the free charges, it's perfectly fine that you gain charges back. And then the suffix of the flask, ideally you get something cool, but main thing for me is to gain free charges. That's flagellar attack. Get that one. As soon as I have it, I equip the flask, and then I roll another one until I have the free charges again and see if I have a better suffix. If yes, I swap, and then just roll them. Reduced effect of curses, I think, is really, really cool. Increased armor is really, really cool. Increased evasion rating is cool as well, I think. It's not that bad, especially, like, armor is better, in my opinion, if you can get it. But yeah, that's also fine. And yeah, movement speed is also fine, things like that. Just invest into your flasks. Like, actually invest into your flasks. And you need to roll on them. I think I have some notes on how to do this. I have this, I have this here, like it needs an 84 plus flask, and you need to do things. That's in here, just read the thing. And that's really important. So still same tree towards a phase 4. I mean, this is a really high tree already. And if you look at a phase 4 here, in terms of that, there shouldn't be too many changes except for the 6 link. That's what we did here. Again, there's notes for that. You don't need to guess as much as I do right now. There's a 6 link. For some reason, efficacy seems to be better this season. I don't really understand. Either there's an issue somewhere, or it's actually efficacy is better than void manipulation. Void manipulation would be the other one. So yeah, get a 6 link. That's like a really interesting thing. So you can get a 6 link before. I don't think it's worth it. I would do it whenever I do my fancy chest. And don't worry about it before. Anything else here should be pretty much the same. So let's look at the items here in this phase 4. These are going to be endgame items for me and for the entire scope of this guide. These are endgame items and really cool. So first of all, this fancy chest, that's typically the first item I go for, because this determines how much spell suppression I need to go get elsewhere. And I'm aiming for really high spell suppression here. I craft this chest myself. I get a base with like the fixed in place life thing, however it's called, fractured life here. I have an entire video about that. It's in the document. You can watch it. You can craft this thing on your own. And I think especially for newer players, if you get this far, you have a little project. I think is quite well explained on how to do, and you can craft a rather easy craft, but it looks fancy and it's kind of interesting, and you're going to interact with a lot of mechanics, potentially waste a lot of money, but that's part of the fun. I think it's cool to craft your own chest piece, and I highly recommend it because it's a very, very fun and exciting experience. In my opinion, it's a very defensive chest, obviously. Like, this is the malevolence thing. Okay, it has like aura effect. That's like pretty cool. You can go for that. I start with this piece, and then obviously make sure this then gets to be a 6 link, and then I get my 6 link. I don't really get 6 links before. You can get obviously corrupted ones. These are my endgame type of gloves. They are not very expensive. You can craft them yourself. It's typically cheaper to buy them, in my experience, right? Buy them, the base item, and then maybe add the searing and ether influences. I also go for a lot of searing and exarch and ether influences because I think it's cool. It's a cool mechanic. I like those, and I like adding those. I like this more than the old influences. So you have something you get here. It's also spell suppression, and depends on how much you get here. Like, you need a total of spell suppression, obviously, to reach, to reach 100%, right? So yeah, they are pretty easy to do, and can be a lot of fun to do that. Boots, same thing. Overall, pretty easy boots. I typically find they're very, very cheap. If you look for live, even triple res ones here, because we have fixed the spell suppression. If you look closely here, the spell suppression is gone from your boots. So you need more here and you need more there, right? So that's rather important. But because resistance and stuff gets tight, I need a triple resistance here. But getting a very good triple resistant live boots on a good base, if they do not have movement speed, seems to be rather cheap, which is fine to me because I like to craft movement speed. Either this one or there's like a cannot be chilled one, but we solved this differently. Let's talk about it in a second, but I like this craft here a lot. Gives me onslaught, is like really, really cool. So yeah, that's how I get boots. In this case, the enchant isn't really that important, but yeah, if you want to get a lab enchant, go into the lab, get the enchant. Regarding reduced effect of chill. Here we have 30% reduced effect of chill. We are, by the way, freeze immune, and that's because of Soul of Brine King. If you upgrade it, you get freeze immunity and you get another 50% reduced effect of chill, which gets us to 80% reduced effect of chill, which is basically not non-existence anymore. It's like only 20%. Really cool combination, I find, to have this just on the single jewel here, like a corrupted blood one with that reduced effect of chill. That would be a dream. Anything else is a bonus in here to me. So that's the boots essentially here. There's also, by the way, the pantheons while we're at it, right? Here there's like Brine King and there's Rislata because flask charges during boss fights. Really, really cool. But it's in the thing anyway. Still rocking your Minx hard. We have an unset ring. Typically getting unset ring with fancy stuff is a bit difficult, but live double resist in space for the minimum endurance charge craft, which I think is a cool craft. Such an easy craft to beef up your defenses a bit. Should be a rather cheap item. You should get it, but it's enough as an endgame item, in my opinion. Belt, still there, a heavy belt, because we need the strength, the extra strength, unless you can solve it maybe somewhere else, but yeah. Also here again, this is a very high attribute, right? Again, the attributes are fixed to amulet and this thing, right? Spell suppression is fixed to your chest and your gloves. On the gloves, it's even double, right? Because I have this line, this implicit, again, depending on how many you need, I almost don't need it here, right? It's basically exactly 100. I could even remove it on this specific gearpiece, but it depends how on this gearpiece. It depends how much you get elsewhere, how much dex you get. Just be careful with that, but fix it to the correct items. That's the belt. I added just because somebody suggested, and I think it's a really good idea to add a Sin's Rebirth. A bit of a late game thing, but they might be rather cheap towards the end game, right? Over time they get cheaper, so that's possibility. I just put it in there and I think it's going to be a good idea. It's also not too expensive, not too difficult, and in this case I dropped the silver flask, right? You could drop something else, maybe the quartz flask, definitely not the granite, don't drop the granite, but I like my phasing, so yeah, gotta try that out. I think it's an overall good idea and gives you quite a bit of DPS actually to turn this thing on, like on this baseline without modifiers, we're already getting 500,000 more, which gets multiplied with other things then. So might be a really, really cool and good idea. Let's see if you forgot anything. That's like phase 4. Oh yeah, obviously like get a 6 link, get a 21 gem maybe. And then we get into phase 5. Intentionally, if you get this PoB, it's set to phase 4 everywhere. Because phase 5, in my opinion, is rather overkill. That gets into weird, expensive scenarios where I'm not entirely sure if you actually want to do that, right? You do you. If you're really liking the build, you're just having a good time, cool, but do not feel required to go that deep. The difference is almost not there anymore, especially if you don't boss a lot, right? Or you don't want to go into like uber bossing or something, which this guide is not made for, right? So made a bit slight adjustments on the tree. I think this one is really interesting there. We can again compare what's the difference, right? Getting this one here, we can maybe get rid of the curse mastery. It's dependent on something. Give me a second. I want to try this because I feel like we don't deal that much physical damage. So bosses and stuff, they have for some time, they have actually energy shield, don't they? So maybe that's cool, like a little boost, situational for a point. So worth a try. Seems kind of cool, but that's just 3, similar still 96, 97 tree in terms of skills here. That's the big difference here, honestly. It's awakened gems, right? I mean, you can just buy them. Do you need them? No, but if you want to, go ahead. A quick note here, at least according to this, efficacy is slightly behind an awakened void manipulation. So yeah, it's not that much. So maybe you don't want to get this one, even though it's probably rather cheap, isn't it? So yeah, that's just essentially that. Nothing else really changes here. I think we have maybe some quality, some divergent and anomalous gems, and the interesting one is the divergent Herald of Agony, because baseline Herald of Agony gives you a chance to poison, and if it's on the divergent one, it gives you another 20%, and that allows you to drop this mastery. You save a point by probably or potentially spending quite a lot of money on this gem. You need to decide if that's worth it. So yeah, do some quality things, maybe get alternate qualities, do things like that. In terms of items, it's still the same. I'm just gonna stop it there, essentially, instead of suggesting more crazy things. There are more crazy things you can do, absolutely, and people had a lot of ideas, me as well, but it's not in scope of this guide. If you want to do weirder things and you really like, you get to this point, on the Discord, there's like a small but very, very nice community of people that really like to fiddle and try and make very, very strong versions of this, which are out of scope for me, but you're gonna find like-minded people that just enjoy this general type of build, and then they go in all directions and make crazy things, which I think is rather cool. Something I kind of forgot talking about out of all of this is the bossing setup, right? It's in here anyway if you read the thing, but I'm gonna explain it to you. Here is, we have a bossing setup, right? So bossing means pinnacle bosses, right? Probably not even Eldar, depends on your gear situation stuff, but let's say it's an actual pinnacle endgame boss, or any boss, or even a guardian maybe, if you're really struggling for some point, for some reason. You could utilize that, but it's only meant for really the high-end bosses. There you should really use that, right? So what we do here is we drop Exsanguinate, but it has the same colors, right? So you can just swap out in your boots all these gems. You get Blade Trap with Cluster Trap and Withering Touch. That's basically the important thing, and then you get some increased duration because of the colors, essentially. What this does, this deals no damage, and that's perfectly fine. This is just there to throw blade traps that hit a lot, to apply Withering Touch to make sure the monster has 15 Wither stacks. That's the only thing it does. And that's what you do there. There's another swap necessary to make this possible. Because it's Blade Trap and you at all times have an obliteration, this doesn't work, because obliteration does not work with cold iron with Blade Trap. It needs blades, surprisingly. So we do swap to a cold iron point, and then same colors, just color it as your wand, swap the gems over, and then you can use that. Also important, in my opinion, before I forget, if you do the bossing setup, remove Withering Stab from your bar. You're already using Wither, you can only go to 15 stacks, and you only use this in pinnacle, more dangerous bosses. You do not want Withering Stab to take away from your Flame Dash charges. So just deactivate it on your bar and be fine. Activate it again later. Maybe even take out the gem so you nothing happens. Possibility there, since you need one less gem, you could go ahead and swap out your ring for one that might be a bit better with bossing. Your unset ring, like you have a better one, but it's not unset. Maybe you could do that, and then you beat the boss with that. And that's essentially what you do. After that, swap back to obliteration. Trust me, it's better than cold iron point for mapping. The explosions are just better. So yeah, I don't have a better explanation than trust me, bro, but I know the numbers go bigger with the cold iron point. I'm totally aware, right? So yeah, just use that during mapping. Please do that. And that essentially concludes the entire thing. I hope I did not forget to insert some clips to show you how different stages feel. And I'm tired now. And I hope you have a really, really good league start. Check out the document, check out the notes, and we're gonna see you on Strand, I guess. Bye.